A home is a lot of work. Just plain work. When work at home is planned and organized for cooperation, there can usually be more time for leisure.
I'm certainly in favor of those things. Leisure, fun.
Who isn't?
Wouldn't we all be happier if we worked out a little system for living together in harmony?
But how can we manage them?
We'll have to work out the full answer together.
Say, Mom, you're swell.
Most family problems can be solved through frank and friendly discussion, which points the way to a happy family life.
You know, this is beginning to be quite a family project.
It certainly is.
What's going on, Bloom Church? Man, I'm excited you are here today. First off, if you're new, let me introduce myself. My name is Mike. I have the wonderful honor of being the lead pastor here at Bloom. And listen to me, it does mean the world to me that you're here. You could be anywhere. It just blesses my heart. I'm also excited about everybody tuning in live right now online at our online campus. Love you guys. Man, I hope you're blessed today. Guys, I'm excited about this service. But first off, can we just pray and continue just to welcome God into this place? Holy Spirit, we need you here. Your voice has to be the loudest, clearest voice we hear. Let the words that are spoken be your words. Let the scriptures that we read come alive and show us who we are in your image. And let us grow closer to you. In the name of Jesus we pray, amen, amen. All right, guys, we're starting a brand new series called Parenting with Purpose. This is a series that's actually inspired by a journey Amanda and I have been going through with our pastor for the last several years, Pastor Scott Wilson. And Pastor Scott's really kind of just walked me and Amanda through some healthy things. We've seen God moving in ways, understanding the healthy view of God and the parental life. And it's just been such a blessing. I've had so much growth the last 2 years with his voice and his direction. And he's so great at this. He actually wrote a book last year called Parenting with Purpose. And we'll briefly hit a little bit of it during this series. Some weeks we'll tap into a little bit of it. But that book is so meaty and so good. And so I want to encourage you, if you don't have the book, if you never bought the book, he brought it the last time he was here, but if you didn't get it, we got a couple copies up there. Well, at least we did this morning. They might be gone, but we got more coming in also. So go up to the Welcome Center up top and grab one, because I promise you it's going to bless you. And he's just saying, give it to everybody at cost. So just go up there and get it at cost. He didn't want to charge you. He just wanted to bless you guys. So go take a look at that. But I know something deep in my spirit. I know every single person has a desire to have a good relationship with the people they have do life with, right? Like everybody wants to have a good relationship with your children. You want to have a good relationship with your spouse. You want to have a good relationship with your friends. Like nobody goes, I like kind of bad relationship. Like nobody really, that's not their aim, okay? But for us to walk in that, we actually have to be very intentional with the way we view God. Because if you have a misskewed view of God, guess what's going to happen? It's going to translate into your relationships. A.W. Tozer, he said one of the best quotes ever. He said it like this, I love it. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. What comes into your mind when you're trying to picture God or you think about God literally impacts every part of your life. It impacts the way you deal with stress, how you respond to imperfect people, because guess what? No one's perfect. How you parent, how you are a husband, how you're a wife, it literally translates in every part of your life. So we've got to be very intentional with the way we view God. What's the lens we're viewing God in? I don't know, how many people are gamers in this room? How many people like to game? Like, I'm not a gamer. Can promise you that. You could beat me in any game possible. That's not what I do. However, there's a cool little trend I got to try out that's been going around. It's called VR, virtual reality. How many people have ever heard of virtual reality, right? My boy Lundo's got an Oculus headset on. He let me try this on yesterday. I'm telling you right now, it's like an immersive, out-of-this-world experience. You put these goggles on, and you're in a whole new world. Like, you ever seen the videos of people thinking they're getting ready to fall off a cliff, right? They're freaking out. Well, yesterday I was boxing, and I'm telling you, right, I was beating some dudes up. It was like a full workout. I beat that dude up. Check this out. You're literally watching Lundo right now. Whoa, whoa. And you put this on, and it takes you into a whole new world. Now, get this. It's not reality. It's virtual reality. And sometimes you'll think it's reality. Watch it. Oh, come on, come on. All right, Lundo. This dude mean mugging. Bam, 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 come on. Yeah. Watch this. Check this out. Ready, ready? He coming. Bam, 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 bam. Lundo, come on. And it like changes, man, when you're watching it. Ooh! No school bullies. Give it up for Lundo. Come on. It's fun. It's fun. But here's what I'm going to promise you. You can't do it for too long, okay? Like, it like wears you out physically. But number two, your eyes start straining. You can't be in that virtual reality too long. You got to take the Oculus off and get in reality. You're not meant to live there. The same is true spiritually. Sometimes we've been putting on this Oculus, and we got this incorrect view of God, which is causing us to have an incorrect view of people, and it's straining our lives. It's hindering our lives. And in a moment, it feels good to be in self-pity. It feels good at the beginning, right, to be all in your emotions, in your feel. But over time, it really wears you out. You got to take the lens off and really see God for the way he is. And so I'm going to talk today trying to understand the lens on how we view God through that parental lens. Actually, the main way you see God is through the way you were raised. And I'm not speaking a message, listen to me very clearly, not to bash your parents. And this is not a message where you can go tell your parents what's what. And it's not even a message to condemn yourself. Because some of you might look at the way you're parenting and start wanting to condemn yourself. That's not the point either. This point is saying, I want to correct and get healthy with my lens with God. And sometimes I've got to address what's wrong so I can start working towards what is right. And I'm going to reference some stuff out of two different books. So if you ever want to kind of read this, one book is Ourselves Are Mothers, written by John Townsend and Henry Cloud. Very powerful book. My wife loves that book. Really great book. And then secondly is Experiencing the Father's Embrace, okay? And that's by Jack Frost. Both of these are going to give you some references of what I'm talking about today. But there's certain needs you need met by your mother and you need met by your father. And I'm going to park first at our mothers. Last week was Mother's Day. Did my wife and her team do an amazing job last week? Come on. They can preach, right? Trying to come after my job, all right. But there's some needs you need met by your mother as you're growing up. The first is this: you need safety. Safety is not something you are born with, it's something you learn, right? You get safety not through things, but people. That's how you learn safety. You need that. And one of those first experiences is that connection you have with your mother when you were first born. It's a safe place. But you know what else you need from a mother is you need nurture. You need to be nurtured. Many, many years ago, the Soviet Union did an experiment. They wanted to see what would happen with infants that were newly born if immediately they took them away from their parents and all they did was give them their basic needs: food, like nutrients, and sleep. That's it. They found out that the majority of the infants actually died. That you cannot survive without nurture. It's why one of the greatest things that happens when you're a new baby is the skin-to-skin contact you have with your mother. It's why there's studies that show premature babies, the more human contact they have, the more progressively healthier they get, and they can grow at a standard pace. That we wither away without nurturing. Sometimes we don't receive that from our mother. The third is basic trust. Trust is learned over time in relationship. And here's what a lot of people don't realize. You actually learn EI majorly or mainly from your mom. You learn emotional intelligence and how to deal with emotions through the example your mom displayed in your life, and you accumulate that. The fourth thing is this: it's belonging and invitation. It's not enough to know that you're loved. You want to know that your mom and dad want you around. You want to know that your mother wants to have a relationship with you, wants you in her presence, she invites you into her life. You need to feel invited into and belong. And then lastly, the fifth need that we get from our mother is someone to love. Not just to be loved, but someone we can actually take our affections and affirmations and give to. It's why kids, you ever know, when they want to smooch all over their mom and they want to be in their mom's lap and they want to hug and hang on their mom, right? It's because there's this innate desire to give your love to someone. And here's what happens with a lot of us. I want you to look at this. Do you see God in these? Isn't it crazy how you know God's your safety and he's your nurturer and someone you can trust and he invites you into his life and it's someone you can give your affection to. But here's the problem. A lot of us, we only see God through the fatherly lens, that we miss that God's characteristics are actually also in the motherly lens. Why? Because he created us both in his image, man and woman. Watch what it says in Isaiah. Check this out. Never can a mother forget her nursing child. Can she feel no love for the child she has born? But even if that were possible, I wouldn't forget you. Do you see how God is saying, I'm like that nursing mother. I'm like that mother that nurtures, and I'm like that mother that makes you feel safe and makes you feel belonged and someone you can love. There's this beautiful connection that happens with God that is found in a godly woman's characteristics if they're in your life correctly. Now, unfortunately, not every parent's perfect, and not every parent actually walks in health. And sometimes there's some unhealthy types of mothers that really impact your life. The first is this, the phantom mom. This is the mom that is physically there, but's not emotionally there. This is the mom that you know she's in the home, but she doesn't connect with you emotionally. There's not that really beautiful bond right there. And what happens is as you grow up, you know what happens? As you grow up, you start becoming detached from other people. It's hard for you to emotionally connect with other people. You don't understand that relationship with other people. And it's not like it's like a light switch that you can just flip on. You never learned it as a child. So it's something you have to be conscious of. I find myself here a lot. I didn't have that a lot growing up. I didn't experience that a lot growing up. I had to figure out a lot of those emotional needs throughout myself. And so I found myself being very detached from people a lot, and not understanding how to connect with people, and not even thinking about other people's emotional side or what's going on or their perspective, because I was oblivious to it. And I've had to make conscious decisions to ask myself, how am I emotionally connected with this person? Another unhealthy mom is the China doll mom. This is a mom that's very sensitive, very fragile. And what I mean that is their emotions literally can be up or down. Like any situation can make them spin out of control. Either they get very sad, or they get very angry or frustrated, or they get very quiet and closed off. They're like a roller coaster. When things are good, everything's good. But when it goes wrong or not the way they planned it, it dips and gets unhealthy. And as you grow as an adult, remember, you learn emotional intelligence from your parents. Your kids don't just have emotions. How many people know kids are emotions? They're like a bottle of emotions. And a mom teaches their children how to contain those emotions. And so when you have a China doll mom, when you grow up, you become sensitive. You don't understand how to react to emotions in a healthy way or contain them. So when everything going your way, you're good. But if something happens, even if it seems insignificant to other people, it literally wrecks your world, and you will roller coaster, tank out of it. Life spins out of control. And guess what happens with God? When you're good, it's good. But when you're bad, your emotions lead the ship. And then you have a hard connection with God because you're emotionally unconnected there. Then you also have the controlling mom. This is the mom that literally does everything for you. She literally controls. You feel like you can't take control, that someone else is in control of your life. They make the decisions. They do the work. You literally just obey and follow suit. And guess what happens? Have you ever heard the term mama's boy? Right? They grow up, and guess what? Mama's still doing their laundry. Mama's still cooking for them. Mama's still going to the DMV and taking care of business for them because they don't know how to do it, right? And guess what happens? Then they marry their wife and they want her to be mama. And guess what wife says? I ain't your mama, right? But that's what they're expecting because they've been controlled their whole life. And guess what happens? You start going through life very timid. You start looking at God and you don't take risk or have faith. You just think, you know, I just let the world take me where it takes me because I don't know how to really stand up for myself because I've been controlled my whole life. The fourth is the trophy mom, right? The soccer mom. You got to be on the traveling team. You ain't playing no rec sports. My kids are the best of the best, right? They get all the awards in school. And if you perform, they're happy. Because they like to be bragging. But if you ain't perform, it causes a little embarrassment in their life. They actually put their self-worth on their children. And they feel less than if their kids aren't living up to the expectations they thought. And guess what happens? As you get older, you're constantly in the state of trying to perform to be good enough. And then you deal with perfectionism, and you feel like all your imperfections are found out. And then what do? You think God just looks at you like you're this imperfect person, and he scrutinizes every detail in your life. And then the last one, let's watch this one. Still the boss mom. Here's what you got to understand. As you become adult, you know what's supposed to happen? You're supposed to grow into a friendship with your children, right? You're supposed to enjoy your parents. But some, that's not the role they want to transition to. Some, it don't matter if you're 40 or 50 years old, your mama says, I'm the boss, you're still my little kid. We don't have that role. You still do. You still listen. I'm still in control. They take a little bit of this controlling mom, but then they always continue to make you feel less than as an adult. And guess what happens? You grow up, and you always feel like you're less than to your leaders. You always feel like you're not good enough with your leaders, and guess what happens? Or you go the opposite. You overcompensate, and then you try to dominate everybody, and then out of your insecurities, you're a very oppressive person because you feel like you've always had to try to gain that boss mentality. And then with God, you're either feeling like God never wants anything to do with you, or you're so independent you don't need God. Do you see how that lens can really change the way you view God? Now let's talk about fathers real quick. There's some needs that need to be met by your fathers that you need to experience from your father. Number one, check this out, unconditional expressed love. A child from their father needs to feel a love that doesn't have limits. A love that doesn't have a bar or an expiration, but they also need it expressed. There's a lot of adults that I talk to or that I counsel, and they'll say things like this, I've never heard my dad say he loves me. I mean, I know he loves me, or I think he loves me. I've never heard him say he loves me. And it's because a lot of kids go through life without experiencing that love. They also need security and comfort. How many people know when dad was home, you feeling protected? You're safe, right? If there was a boogeyman, the boogeyman's scared of your dad because your dad could beat up all the other kids' dads at school and a boogeyman, right? There's a security there with dad around. Not only that, but you need praise and affirmation from your dad. You need a dad that doesn't just tell you he loves you, but he calls out the greatness in you. You're beautiful. You're smart. You're creative. You're a problem solver. When I was a kid, I could never be as good as you at that as you are. Look how awesome you are. Like, we need to hear that from our father. It encourages us to be more. Our dad also provides. We don't fear that we're not going to be provided for, taken care of. Dad's there. Dad's going to provide for us. Dad's going to always step up to the plate. But also, you know what's so beautiful we receive from a father? Purpose in life. We receive from a dad not just the present affirmations, we receive the future motivation. You're going to be a great man. You're going to be a great woman. You're going to change the world one day. You're going to be awesome. I mean, I can just picture how much farther you're going to go than I even went. And it makes you see life as a bigger picture, and you can accomplish more. Do you see God in these? Unconditional security, praise, affirmation. Like, that's God. It's the picture of God. I love the way Romans says it like this. So you have not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves. You received God's spirit when he adopted you as his own children. Now we call him Abba Father. Now we get to call him Father. And get this, when they use adoption, here's so it's beautiful. See, prior to this, before the Roman culture changed adoption. Even other cultures after that kind of reverted back to the old ways. But in Roman culture, when you became adopted, you lost all the inheritance and the rights of your old family, but you gained all the inheritance and the rights of your adopted family. You gained their name, their wealth, you gained their status and their placement in life. So when you became adopted, your old stuff went away, the new stuff was there. So when Paul's saying that, he's saying, you lost the inheritance of your sinful self. You lost the inheritance of your tragedy and pain. You lost the inheritance of what you should have never been raised or created as, but you've gained the inheritance of a child of God who loves you, who makes you feel secure, who provides for you, who calls out your greatness and affirms you. How beautiful is that? Now, unfortunately, not every father is perfect. And there's some types of fathers that are unhealthy. One of those is a lot like the trophy mom, the performance-oriented father. You feel like, I can't make dad happy unless I accomplish enough. I can't come home without a win. I can't do if I'm not going to knock it out of the park. It causes you, as you grow up, you never, ever can get rest. You ever known someone that they strive for success, but the moment they reach it, they're never happy or satisfied? They need more. Because they've never, ever known perfection, or they've never known they were good enough, so they always think, I got to get more, I got to get more, I got to get more, because I'm never enough. It causes us unrested spirit, and guess what happens with God? I got to work a little bit more for God. I got to work a little bit more for God. I got to work a little bit more, because God's just never going to be satisfied with me. You also have a passive dad. This is a dad that's home, but not home. The dad that I work hard all day long to provide for the family. So when I come home, I need my time. I need my space. I watch my shows and I tune out the family. I go to my garage. I go to my shop. I go to my man cave. I do my thing called my life. I'm in my own world. Don't disturb dad. And as you grow up, you become passive. You grow up, you don't know how to have relationships. You grow up and you feel like, you know what, I don't know how to build anything beyond this, because I've always thought there's a distance between you and that authority figure in your life. And guess what happens with God? God's there, but God's still not connected to you. Then you have the absentee father. Maybe this is the father that left. Maybe you never knew him. Maybe there's a father that traveled a lot and he was not home a lot. And so you grow up feeling this fear that your dad or those people in your life will always leave you. They won't be there for you. Maybe God will always leave you. This is where I lived a lot in my life. My dad was gone on the road every day. I only saw my dad 4 days a month. That was it. 4 days a month. On top of that, I went to 12 different schools growing up. So I never actually knew what consistent relationships were. I never had a best friend my whole life because I never lived anywhere long enough to have a best friend. And so I grew up always fearing that things are going to change, not knowing how to have long-term friends or long-term relationships, not knowing what consistency felt like. I always feared that, and it actually translated God. I always thought God was never going to be close. He'd give me moments of blessings, but he would never be consistent through a long time. So if I performed well enough, maybe he'd give me a little moment of a blessing, but he was going to pass on and go to someone else later on, and I would have to just beg for his attention again, and hopefully maybe then he would reward me again, because I always felt like he was never there. Or maybe you have the authoritarian father that selects rules over relationship, laws over love. You better obey me or else. You better, or you're going to pay the price. And then you think that's the way every authority is. It's follow the rules or you will be destroyed. You think God just looks at you waiting to put down the gavel of a judge to call your sentence and punishment. And lastly, you have the abusive father. This is when a father was emotionally abusive. Maybe he was physically abusive. Maybe he was sexually abusive to you. Maybe the one that was supposed to protect you didn't. The one that was supposed to make you feel safe did the opposite of that. The one that was supposed to affirm you made you feel less than. I'm sorry if that's what you experienced. And you know what happens a lot? You grow up with a lot of shame and guilt. You start telling yourself, well, if I was a better kid, maybe they wouldn't have done that. If I had a different relationship, maybe he wouldn't have treated me that way. Maybe if I didn't put myself in that environment, it wouldn't have happened. It was not your fault. But you'll walk around with that shame and that guilt. And some of you are in here right now, and you looked at that list of mothers and you looked at that list of fathers, and some of you go, yeah, that's my mom. That's my dad. And I know what that feels like. And you go, I know what dysfunction feels like. But some of you go, Pastor Mike, I didn't have that. My parents were pretty good. I'm happy for you for that. That's great. Listen to me. There's a big myth that goes around that says that all families are dysfunctional. You know that's a lie. You know the only person that says every family's dysfunctional is dysfunctional families. Because they're trying to deflect. Not every family is dysfunctional. And actually, you know what? This is a dysfunctional family. The distance between a dysfunctional family and a good family is here, man. They're not close together. They don't walk side by side. There's a huge difference between dysfunction and good. And that's a beautiful thing. But can I also tell you something? There's a huge distance from good and perfect. There's a huge distance from being just a good parent and the perfect father and the perfect parent your God is. And what we need to recognize is that we're going to try to connect with the perfections of God to enhance ourselves to that level, that as we are physical parents and spiritual parents, we can now project an even healthier version of that in our life. So we're going to go from dysfunction to perfection, or from good to perfection. And to do that, I want you to look at 4 things you're going to have to do. If you're taking notes, write this down. Number 1, you got to recognize. You're going to have to recognize what's going on. How many parents are in the room? How many parents? Raise your hand, right? A lot of parents, come on. How many times when you go out to eat with your kids, they get one of those kids menus, and they got all the games on the back? And what's one of those games? 2 pictures that look identical, but what do they say? Find the 10 differences in one picture from the other and circle it, right? That's what it's like with God. That sometimes you have a good family or a good home, and you go, man, I got to really search for the differences, but they're there because God's perfect and your parents aren't. But sometimes you come from a dysfunctional family, and you're like, bam, and I can see, like that whole face is distorted, right? Like it's very obvious. But what you're trying to do is recognize the differences so you can walk towards health. Here's what you need to understand. What your parents did to you as a child was not your fault. But what you do with it as an adult is your responsibility. And you have a choice to move towards health or stay hurt. It is a choice. And you're going to have to make that decision. Like, I don't know, how many people see a problem, but you always just procrastinate from fixing it or ignoring it, right? How many people got a problem at their house, but you know you got to fix it, but you always feel like a light bulb goes out in your kitchen, and you know you got to go to the store, get a light bulb, but you keep forgetting, and for weeks you like in there cooking with some dim lights, right? Or like there's a toilet that's leaking, just running just a little bit, and you're like, I got to fix that, and you never fix it, and your water bill just keeps going higher and higher because you ain't fixed it, right? Or maybe your wife says, I need some new windshield wipers blades because they're completely gone and non-existent. And she tells you, and you keep forgetting, and you keep procrastinating, and then she's driving in the torrential downpour with our children, risking life and limb because your husband kept forgetting. That's not me. I'm just talking about some other imperfect people out there, okay? Don't be putting that on me. What happens is sometimes we see some things in our lives that are dysfunctional, and we either refuse to deal with it, we keep just sweeping it under the rug, or we haven't even taken the time to recognize it. There is some stark differences between your God and your parents that you're going to have to connect with. Listen to me. Watch God, and I want you to see the view of who God is. Check this out. He is our Father. He loves us and calls us his children. That's what we are. He loves you very much. He calls you his children. And it's not just like a nice term of endearment. It's who you are. That's your identity. Not only that, but his loving kindness never ceases. His compassion never fails. They're new every morning. He is faithful. You have a kind God. You have a compassionate God. You have a faithful God. And this is so beautiful. Watch the words of David here in Psalms. Even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. Your God never abandons you. Your God recognizes you. Your God is there even if you went through tragedy, even if you went through dysfunction, even if you experienced things you should have never experienced. Your God is there, but you're going to have to recognize it. You're going to have to make a choice to identify it. You're going to have to literally evaluate your life. I had to do that. I did that through therapy. I've been in therapy for years now. I've experienced a lot of things coming to mind in my life through therapy. I had memories coming back. I've had to wrestle through things. Here's what I found pre-therapy and what I've learned. I learned survival instincts through how I was raised. And I would treat people or respond to situations in an unhealthy way out of an instinct, not being conscious out of health. And what happens is when you start recognizing some of these things in your life, you start evaluating how you talk to people, how you respond to situations with a conscious decision to go to health, not out of instinct. You're going to have to recognize it. You know what the second thing you're going to have to do? You're going to have to release it. Listen to me. You may have to give your parents a gift, humanly speaking, they don't deserve. And that's the gift of forgiveness. You may have to forgive your parents. And forgiving your parents doesn't let them off the hook. And forgiving your parents doesn't say what they did was okay or right. You know what forgiveness says? I'm releasing them to God. I'm not the corrector, he is. I'm not the one that causes judgment, that's his job. I release them to God. If you've ever Googled this, you need to Google this. How to capture monkeys in India. You may need it. It may come in handy one day, okay? I'm not going to get a monkey around, okay? But here's what they do. Check this out. They take a coconut, and they hollow it out, and they leave a hole big enough for them to stick their hand in. And they tie that coconut to a rope, to a tree. And then they sprinkle some bananas all around that coconut, and then they stick a banana inside the coconut. Monkey goes around, monkey's like, that's good banana. Monkey goes, woo, there's a banana in the coconut. And the dudes are just chilling like this right by a tree. And all of a sudden, a monkey sticks his hand in the coconut. He grabs a banana and pulls, and he can't get his hand out. And guess what they do? They just walk right over, all casual, grab the rope, and they just drag the monkey all the way to his death. He won't let go of the banana. He keeps holding on all the way to his demise. How many of that is us? How many times are we holding on to the past and things in our life, and we won't let go and let our hand free, and it's dragging us to destruction? Because unforgiveness is not about the other person, it's about you. You ever heard that quote? Having unforgiveness like drinking poison hoping the other person dies? Don't even make sense. It's about giving someone else authority and power in your life they don't deserve. Watch what Job says. Surely resentment destroys the fool. Man, when you have this unforgiveness, when you don't release it, it builds resentment in your life. Anger and frustration and pity starts stirring up in your spirit. You can't let go. And it's like a replay. Every time you're driving by yourself, you're just thinking about it. Or something will spur a memory, and you run right back to those emotions and those feelings. And you tell that other person off in your quiet time. I'm going to tell them this. I'm going to hit them with that. I'm going to send this text. And why? And it just controls and consumes you. Watch what the writer of Hebrews says. Our job is to work at living at peace with everyone and work at living a holy life, for those who are not holy will not see the Lord. And watch what he says. Look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. Watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. He says you got to be careful because people will offend you. People will wrong you. People will treat you in ways they shouldn't. People will make decisions that are not appropriate. People will post things online they shouldn't. People will literally walk in their sinful side at times, and it may hurt you. And you got to watch out so that root of bitterness doesn't grow up, because what happens with roots? They absorb all the nutrients around. And what happens when you have bitterness? You absorb all those emotions, your anger, your frustration, your bitterness, and you're absorbing it. And you're now, what do? You store it. You don't let go. You replay it. It's always in your mind. It's always like running on repeat, always in your mind. And as you continue to store it, it grows. And what was a hurt and a pain and a tragedy and a dysfunction now is all-consuming, monumental in your life. It controls every aspect of your life, and it doesn't just hurt you, it corrupts many. Corrupts your marriages, corrupts your relationship with your children, corrupts your relationship with God. You've got to recognize and then let go and release. And you know what else you got to do? You got to reject it. You got to reject those negative feelings coming in. You got to reject the lies. The devil is prowling like a lion seeking to devour you. That's why Paul says in Ephesians, we're not fighting against people. We're fighting against the dude that's trying to get us from our purpose and our God-given design. The devil wants you thinking about all the imperfections of your parents. He wants you walking in constant thought process of how they've wronged you and how they've harmed you and how they haven't been there for you. And listen to me, hurt people hurt people. And the reality is your parents came from hurt. Generational curses are real. And they're like a domino effect. And you know what generational curses do? They compound. They get bigger every generation. And it may start at small generations ago, but it keeps growing. And if you don't break that curse, that generational curse, you will compound it and make it bigger and hand it to your children. That's why Paul says we cannot be prisoners locked in a prison of deception. And then watch what he goes on to say in verse 5. We destroy every proud obstacle that keeps us from knowing God. We capture the rebellious thoughts and teach them to obey Christ. We start recognizing when the negative emotions come into our mind. We start recognizing when those words start coming into our mind. We start recognizing when the lies coming into our mind. And we're going to teach it to obey Christ. I will not pass this down to my children. My children will not feel an emotional disconnection from me. My children will not have an absentee parent in their life. My children will know their worth and their greatness. My children will be nurtured and they will feel safe and they will be provided for. My children will. And I reject the lies that says I can't be more. I reject the lies that say, well, that's how you were raised. It may be how I was raised. It's not who I was created to be. I'm rejecting the lies. And then when I reject the lies, I replace them with the truth of God. You've got to learn to receive, recognize, release, reject, receive from God. James says it so beautifully. Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father, who created us created all the lights in heaven. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. Listen to me. Some of you don't think you're good enough to receive the promises of God. Some of you have grown up thinking you're not worthy enough to get them. Some of you believe the lie, your ship has sailed. And you need to remember, He never left you and He never forsakes you. Cast your cares upon Him, for He cares about you. You are His masterpiece, His workmanship. how wonderfully complex you are. He holds you in the palms of his hands. He sees you wherever you go. Never can you escape his presence. The promises go on and on and on. You got to get to the place where you start receiving who he is and what he wants to be in your life. I love the way Paul says in Romans, I'm convinced nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today, our worries about tomorrow, not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or the earth below. Nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus. Nothing. Not the dysfunction of your parents. Not the tragedy you experienced, not their imperfections, not the hurt someone else dealt you, not the lack of them being in your life. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. You just got to open your heart to receive it. You just got to quit rejecting it. And some of you need to think your prayers are good enough to be heard. You need to remember you've been adopted. You lost the inheritance of your old way of life. You've received the inheritance of God. Some of you need to experience that very first step of receiving God's love, which comes through his forgiveness in your life. Maybe you need forgiveness for the words you've said. Maybe you need forgiveness for the things you posted online. Maybe you need forgiveness for the way you've treated your children. Maybe you need forgiveness for the animosity you have towards your parents. Maybe you need forgiveness because you're saying or doing or behaving or acting in a way you know is not appropriate. But here's what I know. All who call upon the name of the Lord will be saved, not because it's his job or duty, not because he's trying to force you into submission. For God so loved the world, he gave. While you were a still sinner, he sent his son to die for you because he loves you. So right now, I want everybody to bow your heads. Nobody looking around. And we're going to pray a prayer together so you can receive that free gift of forgiveness and God's grace. So repeat after me as a family. Dear Jesus, I believe you died on the cross. I believe you rose from the grave. And I believe your blood washes away all sins. Come be a part of my life. I am forgiven. I am chosen, I matter, and I give you my life. Holy Spirit, move. Peace, love, forgiveness, your presence. With every head bowed, I want nobody looking around. If you made that commitment today for the first time, or you recommitted your life to Jesus today, I'm going to ask you to do something crazy. It's a big step. It's huge. In just a second, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. You may say, why would you want me to raise my hand? Because listen to me, you received the forgiveness of Jesus, but I want you walking out of here rejecting the lies of the devil. I want you rejecting the fact that when you leave here, you're not the same. You're a new creation, and you're walking out of here new and more, and the devil's not going to get his lies in your spirit any longer. So on the count of 3, if you made that commitment, I want to see hands all over this place raised. 1, don't be afraid. 2, we going to celebrate. 3, get your hands up.